My ex-wife had an affair with my golden child brother and had his baby. Now my family, who always disliked me, is begging for money since I got a promotion. I'm 29, divorced from my 27-year-old ex-wife 2 months ago. She had been cheating on me with my estranged 27-year-old brother for some time, and I discovered it 4 months ago when she revealed her pregnancy. Initially, she tried to convince me the baby was mine, but my brother's frequent visits made me suspicious. I checked her phone, confronted her with what I found, and she admitted the affair with my brother. My family and I hadn't spoken since I left home at 18. They always treated me as an outsider, and my brother was the favored one. When I saw my parents threw a party for him without inviting me, I confronted them. They said they didn't want my brother to feel left out after my acceptance letter and suggested I should uplift him instead of complaining. That broke me, and I decided to cut ties with them. I paid for college through loans and work, then rented a small apartment with a friend. After college, I never spoke to my parents, nor did they try to contact me. Last year, my brother reached out online to reconnect with me and my parents, who missed me. A lot had changed since I left home. I was married and leading a comfortable life. Though I hadn't fully moved on from the past, I agreed to meet them. It was initially awkward, but they made an effort to mend things, so I felt obliged to reciprocate and invited them to my home, which I later regretted. Introducing my brother to my ex was a mistake. They began an affair, and she became pregnant. I was thrilled at first, thinking the baby was mine, but my brother's frequent visits soon made me uneasy. Things started to get strange when my brother would touch my wife's pregnant belly and talk to it. My ex brushed it off as no big deal, but I couldn't shake the nagging suspicion that my brother was more involved with the baby than he let on. 6 months into the pregnancy, I went through her phone while she was asleep, and my worst fears were confirmed. The texts between my ex and my brother proved that the baby was his, and they had been involved for some time. Worse, they planned to reveal the affair only after the baby was born, then divorce me so she could be with my brother, living off the child support I'd be paying. The next morning, I confronted her with the texts. Though she initially denied it, she eventually admitted the truth. That was the end of my 2-year marriage. My parents predictably sided with my brother and my ex. Their claims about valuing both of us equally were empty words. When my ex and brother announced our divorce on social media and their decision to marry, my family fully supported them. No one cared about the damage done to my mental health or trust. They told me I should be happy for them and join in the celebrations. I cut them out of my life, which complicated my divorce. My ex-wife walked away with a significant settlement and my car, as my family backed her claims against me. She and her lawyer fabricated a story that I was toxic and controlling, forcing her to quit her job, despite it being her own choice. My family reinforced this by saying my misogynistic attitude and temper were the real reasons they'd cut me off. With all this stacked against me, I lost a lot of money in the divorce, but I managed to keep the house. Once it was finalized, I was relieved to be done with all of it and these people. Fortunately, there was no waiting period for divorce where I lived, and my ex didn't contest it, so I could move on quickly with my life. Forgetting all this was tough, but I threw myself into work, pushing to move on from that painful chapter. It paid off. I got a promotion 2 weeks ago with a better position, salary, and company car. To celebrate, I treated myself to a solo dinner at one of my favorite restaurants. However, posting about it online led to my mother contacting me and asking me to visit. I was baffled, given we hadn't spoken since the divorce and they had supported my ex and her lies. I initially ignored her, but she kept calling and even showed up at my office, causing a scene with the receptionist. I eventually promised to visit in a few days to get her to leave. When I finally visited, my parents had used the settlement to move into a bigger house for the baby, who was born just over 3 weeks ago. I assumed the alimony was being used to cover bills, but it didn't impact me much since it was a small part of my salary. My brother wasn't home, and my ex was asleep, so I only spoke with my parents. I didn't try to make small talk, just waited for them to get to the point. After a few minutes of silence, my father bluntly said that my brother had been fired and the alimony and settlement weren't enough anymore. They had seen my promotion post and hoped I could help them out since they were running low on money. My parents had retired long ago. My brother was unemployed, and my ex wasn't going back to work. The alimony wasn't sufficient for a family of 5, especially with a newborn. Despite understanding this, I was stunned by their audacity to ask me for help after everything that had happened. I was speechless for a moment, but then decided not to engage with their request. I simply got up and left without a word. As I reached the door and opened it, I found my brother standing outside. My parents urged me to stay and listen to them, while my brother looked alarmed by my presence. I didn't say a word and proceeded to leave. It was raining heavily, and I got drenched walking to my car parked outside their lawn. By the time I reached it, my mood was even worse. As I searched for my keys, my family caught up with me. This time, it was my brother pleading for help, which was strange since he had always been smug and arrogant due to how our parents treated us. It was clear that they were in a tough spot, but I lost my temper. I told them to leave me alone and said they could beg on the streets if they were truly desperate. A stranger might be more inclined to help them than I would. After that, I got in my car and drove off, leaving them in the rain. I won't lie. It felt satisfying to finally stand up to them after how they had treated me my whole life. It's been 2 days since then, and I'm second-guessing myself. My mother has been bombarding me with texts, and I feel guilty for not helping them. I know I can afford to send a little money, but given everything that happened, it feels like I'd be used. I'm torn between sticking to my decision and the guilt I feel. In the end, I decided not to help them. I felt incredibly guilty about abandoning them, but I realized they had done the same to me throughout my life and during the divorce. So why should I do differently? I told my mother to stop pestering me or I'd involve my lawyers, which would not end well for them. Naturally, this upset them. A few days ago, my brother came to my house. He expressed sympathy for my childhood, but argued that he was just inherently better than me, which was why he was favored. He told me I should stop holding grudges and just help them, as any normal person would. I laughed in his face at his audacity. I told him instead of trying to manipulate me into helping, he should be job hunting. This hit a nerve, and he started yelling about how I was just jealous that even our parents and my ex-wife preferred him over me. I agreed with my brother's accusation that I was just seeking revenge by refusing to give my family money. I didn't even bother to argue and simply confirmed that my actions were driven by revenge, and there was little he could do about it. This infuriated him, and he threatened to come after me to force me to cough up the money, claiming I'd regret speaking to him that way. Honestly, I'm not taking his threats seriously. He can try to intimidate me all he wants, but I know he's incapable of doing anything significant. I'm unbothered. Update. 3 days ago, my brother came by again, trying to convince me to help them, but he was unsuccessful. My parents had tried before, and it hadn't worked out for them either. This time, my ex decided to call me. I was hesitant to answer, but I figured it was better than having her or my family show up in person again. When I spoke to her, I was stunned by how entitled and cruel these people could be. She started off politely, acknowledging that I had no obligation to help after everything they'd put me through. However, she urged me to think it over and be the bigger person. She tried to appeal to my sympathy by reminding me of how my parents had supported me growing up, and that she had tried to be a good wife. I almost laughed at her audacity. My parents had always favored my brother and ignored me, and she had cheated on me with him. I told her that I felt awful about their situation, but I was already paying her alimony, which she didn't even deserve since she cheated on me. My family had manipulated me into paying it by lying and making me out to be the bad guy. When I refused to help, she started crying and accused me of being selfish and heartless. It was ironic, considering her own actions. She then said my brother was right and threatened to get the law involved, demanding a higher alimony and dragging me to court to humiliate me again. Honestly, I'm not intimidated. The first time around, I was so emotionally drained that I didn't fight back or challenge their false claims. I just paid the alimony without contesting their allegations, even though I was neither toxic nor controlling. I simply wanted to get the divorce over with, regardless of the financial cost. But this time, I'm prepared to fight back and make sure my family gets a lesson they won't forget. Update. In a surprising twist, My ex-wife followed through with her threat and filed for a higher alimony amount, citing my promotion. This time, however, I'm not letting things slide so easily. I involved all our mutual friends, updating them on the situation and filling them in on the real reasons behind our separation, as most only knew that we'd split up. They were shocked by what I told them and agreed to testify on my behalf if needed. I also instructed my lawyer to work on discontinuing the alimony arrangement entirely, as my ex didn't deserve it at all. Over the past few days, I gathered all the evidence I could find to expose how my parents and brother had mistreated me and were now harassing me for money, knowing about my promotion. I was determined to cut these toxic people out of my life for good and wasn't about to spare their feelings. I even convinced some of my cousins who had seen me treated as an outsider growing up to support my case. They agreed, despite us not being particularly close. My lawyer was pleased with the evidence we had collected, saying it would create a strong case to potentially stop the alimony payments. It was already known that my ex had cheated, but the narrative she and my family had spun, painting me as the villain and my brother as the savior, was a lie. I was determined to set the record straight this time. When I presented video testimonials from friends and relatives proving that my family's claims were false and that I wasn't the person they made me out to be, my family had no credible defense. They probably assumed they would be let off easily, just as they had been before. I wasn't emotionally fragile anymore. The ordeal had made me stronger. Yesterday, it was finalized that I wouldn't have to pay alimony anymore due to the new evidence, and I was overjoyed. Seeing the smug look wiped off my family's faces and my ex on the brink of tears was incredibly satisfying. I was ready to celebrate with some great takeout and a movie, but of course, my family had to do everything they could to ruin my happiness. As I neared my house, I saw my brother's car parked outside, which confused me. I went in to find my family blocking my door. I was taken aback but decided not to show it. I told them to leave my property or I'd call the police. My dad then started lecturing me about how ashamed I should be, accusing me of betraying the family by not helping them when they needed it most. I remained silent, refusing to engage. I knew they wanted to provoke me into a reaction, hoping I'd do something rash, but I wasn't falling for it. Their desperate measures only made things worse for them. My silence seemed to infuriate them even more. Despite my mother's demands for me to show respect and speak to my dad, I refused. They grew increasingly agitated, clearly hoping for a dramatic confrontation, but I wasn't giving them one. After more yelling, my brother lost his temper, grabbed me by the collar, and tried to hit me. My dad managed to pull him back just in time while my brother yelled that I was a jealous loser who'd never amount to anything. It was amusing, coming from an unemployed guy still living with our parents and begging for money. I told them to leave or I'd call the cops, suggesting they should run given their financial situation. They left begrudgingly, with my mother making one last attempt to shame me into giving them money, which failed. They haven't tried to contact me since, and I hope it stays that way. Now moving on to the next story. Story 2. My wife cheated on me with my stepdaughter's father, so I divorced her immediately. I'm 33 million, and my wife, 33F, was unfaithful in December. I walked in on her with him at his house, already knowing what was going on. It was my stepdaughter's father. For years, I had to deal with him and tried to keep his behavior in check. I spent my days caring for the house, pets, yard, and her 4-year-old daughter. When we got married, she had me give up my old car so I could drive one of hers. I also helped part-time at her law firm. My days started at 6 a.m. and often didn't end until 2 a.m. because of all my responsibilities. I tried to forgive her, but I kept catching her talking to him and even making plans with other men. She would constantly assure me she wanted to work things out, but her actions said otherwise. She emotionally and physically manipulated me, blaming me for her cheating, saying it was my fault for not stopping it, and pressuring me into situations I wasn't ready for. After I caught her with him, she became pregnant. I asked for a DNA test, but instead, she went ahead and had an abortion, blaming me for that too. Last month, I decided enough was enough and left. I quit my job, and since then, my family has been supporting me. I struggle every day to even get out of bed and take care of myself. We were married for less than a year. I'm not receiving any spousal support. I don't have a car. I lost my job, and half of my family, including my stepdaughter, is now gone. I have no home and no money. If it weren't for my family stepping in, I'd be completely homeless. My mental health is in a terrible state, especially since I found out the cheating started when we were just dating. It feels like everything was fake, some kind of twisted game for her, and now I'm left to pick up the pieces. I was cheated on and emotionally abused, yet it feels like I'm the one being punished. My lawyer, who is a trusted family friend, tells me there's not much I can do legally. I believe him, but I'm still lost in all this emotion. How do I fix myself? I know I need to take small steps, like finding a new job, but even leaving the house feels overwhelming. I'm struggling with severe depression and anxiety, to the point where being in public or even with friends is exhausting. Every time I'm with them, I end up breaking down in tears once I get home. I feel broken, and it seems like nothing is getting better. Update 1. Ex-wife bringing affair partner to our divorce hearing. A friend told me that my ex is planning to bring the affair partner to our divorce hearing as one last dig at me. Some friends have offered to come along for support, while others suggest I just do my best to ignore them. How would you handle this? Update 2. Divorce hearing today. The hearing finally happened today. My post history has the whole story, but in short, I caught my ex-wife cheating on me right after Christmas. I tried to make it work, but I kept catching her talking to the same guy and making plans to meet others. She was constantly getting inappropriate texts and Snapchats, all while lying to my face, saying she had cut contact. Every time, it was the same story. I finally told her I was leaving and filing for divorce, and once again she threatened me, saying she'd kill herself if I left. But here we are. I'm still alive, and she's permanently out of my life. After the courthouse, I hit a few personal bests at the gym, and honestly, I'm feeling great. She doesn't know where I live now since I moved out of town, and she has no idea where my new job is either. This woman, who I once loved dearly and would have done anything for, took everything from me. My job, my car, my home, my stepdaughter, my marriage, my mental health, and possibly even my child, though I'm confident the baby was her affair partner's. She got an abortion when I asked for a DNA test. This entire year has been hell, and yet she still blamed me for leaving and tearing our family apart. By the time she arrived at the hearing this morning, I was already talking to my lawyer. We just needed to be there to get the papers signed by the judge. I didn't look at her once, not even when she handed me mail from our old house. I just grabbed it and kept walking. Interestingly, the affair partner wasn't with her, even though she had told mutual friends he would be. Everything went smoothly, and while I was stressed and emotional inside, I kept a smile on my face and tried to stay positive. She sounded like she was about to cry, but I never looked. When I got home, I noticed a note mixed in with my mail. It turns out the affair partner didn't come because he got another girl pregnant. I tore the note up and threw it away. She had a loving husband, cheated on me, lied, and hurt me until I left her, all for a guy who was seeing other women anyway. The irony is that he hates being a father. He's lazy, used to abuse my ex-wife, and always drops his daughter off at his mother's place whenever he has her. His own daughter used to call him by his first name and called me Dad because she barely knew him. His mother even cried with happiness over Christmas because she was so grateful her granddaughter had me in her life. Now this new baby is going to complicate his life even more. My only hope is that whoever he got pregnant gets away from him quickly for the sake of the baby. Despite everything, I feel strangely alone today. I'm bouncing between feeling really happy and oddly empty. Sorry if this is all over the place. I guess I just thought I'd feel better by now. Truthfully, I wish none of us were suffering.